And welcome everyone to another exciting adventure on the energy that surrounds us. I'm your host Michael, and tonight I am blessed to have a returning guest on, and his story is so amazing. I am so grateful that he is back on to share more information with us so that we can delve even deeper into this topic. And so I am going to turn it over to my guest, the one, the only, Afterlife experience extraordinaire, Regan Forston.
Thank you, Michael. I love your intro. Is that new? Or was that, have you had that for a while? I love that intro.
That is actually my fourth season intro. So
yeah, no, it's looking good. You know, I thought I should be wearing like a spacesuit or something, though. And here we are. I'm just sitting in my house. Okay, so when you think of a question, just interrupt me anytime, Michael, okay? Because I could go for hours and hours and hours on this topic. It's there's so much to it. And I'm glad. Thank you for having me back on again, because I always love having the chance to make people aware of this amazing discovered process now that changes everything. It is so crazy, and it's right in step and right on time with all of the changes we can all feel that's beginning to happen in this world right now. In a sense, so many people are worried. So many people, there's a lot of people afraid, and there's a lot of people that are rejoicing because they can feel that the old ways of doing things in the world are crumbling down, you know. And I get it from so much work from having my clients in heaven on the other side, that what's happening right now is, in a sense, it's what was predicted in the Bible, only it's happening on many, many levels, mostly metaphysical, and some in the physical here, you know, with earthquakes and change, you know, things and wars and all that kind of thing. But it seems like, from what I get from a lot of very highly spiritually knowledgeable people, that we're heading right in, we're down at the bottom and heading upward in a new spiral of a new cycle, a new era, heading towards peace. And, you know, where it's more, I'd say more heaven-like as we're beginning on earth. And we've been through this cycle before, but it's so many thousands of years between cycles. So, you know, we can't have the new kind of come in until the old gets kind of broken down so we can rebuild everything better, you know. Just to give a little background here. Yeah. People, is that I work, one of the about 200, we have about 265 now, I think. I keep saying 250, but we've trained more facilitators. And the Michael Newton Institute, one of their facilitators, We now have about 260 trained facilitators working in 45 countries all over the world. And we found a way to have our clients get into a super deep state of relaxation. People would call it trance or whatever. It's more easy than people think. Matter of fact, it's about 90% successful the first time someone tries this. Something that we didn't know was possible until we accidentally discovered it. What it does is it allows people to transcend this world and visit the afterlife. Um, I jokingly say it's like having a near-death experience without the death part. In other words, this is a scientifically structured way, drug-free way, easy process that allows people to discover what lies beyond. So there's all the talk, the aliens are coming, the changes are coming on everything in the world right now. This goes behind everything so that people can see, go back to source in a way and look at it from there and look down and see everything that's happening in the world. Nothing to fear. We've done about, we're heading towards 90,000. I always say 80 now because I know that's for sure, but we're doing more sessions all the time. So pretty soon we'll be at 90,000 people that we've had have this, amazing experience. I've been 3 times myself. My wife's been 2 times. And what I want to do today, to be more specific, Michael, is I call it the 7 stations that we've discovered on the other side. And I'll go through them one by one to talk a little bit about them. But we're researching, so we keep pushing the boundaries of, what can we do? What can we find out? How much will they let us know there on the other side? So in a session, what happens for people that are listening, if they want to have a session, I send them homework. And in the homework, they'll do 3 things. Everybody has questions that if they could be in heaven or in the afterlife, wow, everybody's got questions they want to ask about their life. Why were they born? Why is the world the way it is? Some people want to talk directly to Jesus or Buddha or Muhammad. And anybody that's ever lived on earth before, you can talk to over there. Even if they're reincarnated and they're somebody else in a body form here, there's always the higher self of each of you. Have a higher self over there. I got to meet my higher self over there. We all have higher selves, and that part is always in the afterlife. So in sessions, I just had someone talk to Tesla. I had someone, well, of course, people talk to Jesus and Buddha and that. I had 2 people come to me, which I'll mention when we get to what we call the place of higher learning over there, where they have classrooms and things that teach every imaginable thing you can imagine to inspire people for the arts. I even had a person recently that in a meeting found themselves in a classroom where they were teaching her how to be a better supervisor, manager, because she had like 40 people under her. And they taught her how to be the best kind of manager where you could come from the heart and get things done and be direct and be professional, but do it in a very loving way. And it was some very good advice that they gave her that way. A lot of CEOs could benefit from having that experience. But anyway, so when people have a list of questions, they write a list of people they want to talk to over there. For instance, you can talk to people that have passed on. Like in the times I've been over there, I got to see my mother and my father and my brother, who've all passed on. And it was just cool. It was just like visiting for Thanksgiving or something, seeing how they're doing, and they're just doing great. Only my mom looks like she looks like she's in her 40s instead of 94 when she passed on. She always shows to me as that young, vibrant woman that she was, that when I was a kid, they're just mom and dad.
So I have an interesting question about this, and that is, you talk about going back and meeting your relatives that have passed and are on the other side, or their higher self is there.
Mm-hmm.
How far back in people's genealogy have you been able to go? Like, if
Oh,
I wanted to talk to, say, someone in BC and be like, what do you have for me?
yeah,
Is that possible?
yeah. Yeah, I would say so because most of the people, what I do is, once they give me a list of people they want to talk to, which is usually, husbands, wives, siblings, children, grandparents, aunts, uncles, co-workers, lovers, uh, people that are currently in your life's play. Most people want to find out that first because that's dealing with their life now. But a lot of times I say, well, look, if we have time, if we get done all the work over there and you still have energy, hey, let's have some fun and talk to somebody from the past. And I'm thinking now, I haven't actually, but besides people that would have been like Tesla, he would have been not too long ago. I'm trying to think of the psychic who was like one of the number one psychics back in the 50s and 60s. And they have people, he passed on, but they have a whole society for him now. Gosh,
Edgar
was
Casey.
yeah. I've had several people talk to Edgar Casey over there, but mostly they want to talk to Buddha or Jesus, and Jesus goes way back, of course, a couple thousand years.
Right.
That way. But yeah, I would love to do a session for someone. It would be so cool if they wanted to talk to like Moses or something, you know, or oh gosh, who else would be good, or like Napoleon or somebody, and just say, hey, what the heck. Now, here's the thing, and this is kind of a mind blower, and I found more about this since the last time I was on your show, because it happened in the sessions. We're finding out on the other side now, there's no time and space, and everything is now. It's like all the lives that we've lived or ever will live, we're experiencing them like, in a timeline, but actually they're all going on at the same time. So Dolores Cannon, who wrote a book about Nostradamus, when she had a client in trance, she was able to have that person talk to Nostradamus as he was writing all of the things he was writing.
Like a
And
plot train.
Nostradamus said to them, says, look, you're not catching me in the past. I'm writing these now, and this is what I mean by these things. So it's a good book to read about Dolores Cannon. She makes clear a lot of his predictions, about, because his writings are so convoluted and so how I say, it's almost like they're in code or something. It's hard to, because he was seeing things from when he lived, but and explaining things that the world had never seen before. So that came out, sometimes you have to kind of put the pieces together. But matter of fact, okay, since we segued into this, I'll tell you, because otherwise I'll forget. A client I had this last month, actually been about 6 weeks ago, he was in another country, foreign country, and he was bedridden for, oh gosh, 5 years now. And he had nobody in his life. He was living with his parents, but we found out in researching there when he went to the other side that he wanted to have a lifetime where he could see what it felt like to have no relationships. In other words, because he thought, relationships aren't that important. Why do we have them? And so he thought, well, let me pick a life. I'll go down and see what it's like to not have relationships. Boy, was he sorry what he signed up for. Because even his parents that he asked to be his parents, because you shall find out we usually choose our parents, they came from a soul group that was not even near him. So he hadn't had relationships with these other souls before. So they agreed to come in, just to mother and father him and that, but yet he didn't have any prior connection to that. So he was setting it up so he could see what it's like to not have relationships. In this lifetime, he has yearned, especially he's in his late 40s. There was 3 women that have come to in his life that he just, wow, he just thought, boy, oh boy, I would just love to have a relationship with them. But all 3 of them were already taken. And there were people that were not approachable. So he was like, could see how beautiful these people were and how they would have been a great relationship, but they were not available. So he had this heartbreak in a way that he, just can't. So after COVID, or right during COVID, he became he got chronic fatigue syndrome so severe that for him to get up and just go to the bathroom, he would get back in bed. It would take him hours and hours to recuperate because he just dragging, you know. So he had one of the most interesting sessions I've done. It's so good to talk about it because so many things happened in the 4 hours that he was in the afterlife. So he's having trouble going into trance, you know, and we're getting some way, and then he gets too much awake and not enough asleep. And finally, in frustration, he says to me, he says, Regan, didn't you tell me I have my higher self? Can't you just ask my higher self to come in and do this? And I thought, okay, never tried that before, but let me see. I said to him, can I ask, I want to ask your permission to talk to your higher self. May I have permission? Because you always have to ask the permission. He said, yes. And then immediately out popped his higher self and introduced himself. And the higher self says to me, says, his mind is so crazy right now. He's bothering me. Can you put him deeper in trance so that I can talk to you about him? And so I called on him, his higher self. I did some deepening techniques. And then the higher self says, good, he's kind of disappearing a little bit because I need to talk to you about him. You know, it was like, it was just so cool. So I'm talking to the higher self, and the higher self tells me, he says, we chose this life, you know, because, you know, we wanted to find out what it was like to not have relationships. And I said, well, how's that going? You know, and he says, he is so miserable, you know, down there. And he's learned a lesson how important it is that God put us to where we have some relationships in our life, because that's where the love, that's where you get a chance to love. That's where a chance you get to be loved. That's where a chance you get to be of service to others and to have other people serve you, you know, and allow them the opportunity to do that. And there's so much beauty in that. And being by yourself is just not where it's at, you know, that way. So then all of a sudden, his body changes or something, and out comes a voice of somebody else. And I'm going, I says, is that you, higher self, or is this somebody else? He says, no, this is me. And I said, well, who are you? And it was another part of him that was living concurrently in another life on another planet. And it was a female, and it was from what she called a feline planet. Oh, okay. So now I'm talking to the higher self, and now I'm talking to another part of him that's living in a current life, the same time as he's living one now, on a planet where they call it a feline, because the beings there, you know, they can walk on twos or fours, but they have feline characters, but they're highly evolved spiritually. So I asked, I don't know, boy, at the age I'm getting now, I forget her name, but I said, well, why did you come to this session? She said, well, I could see that part of myself, which is him, was having a lot of difficulty physically and emotionally and spiritually. And since I'm more advanced, I wanted to come into the session to kind of give my 2 cents worth to help him. So now that happens. Okay. So then I'm doing that for a little while. And I said, well, while I'm talking to the three of you now, we're getting lost here a little bit. And he needs to be healed from this illness that he has, or needs to get some perspective there. I says, can we ask a healer to show up too? And the higher self says, yeah, I'll bring in a healer. So now a healer named Zen shows up. So now I got four. There's him, who's kind of in the background right now, his higher self, the feline from another planet, and the healer that's there. So Zen says, boy, he's got himself in a predicament here. And I'm going to do a body scan for him and kind of work on him a little bit, see if we can help. But I asked Zen, you know, well, is it true that he's kind of put him in this position? He planned this whole thing? And Zen says, yeah, he did. And Zen says, you know what? I think he's learned his lesson. He's learned how important relationships are. So you know what? Zen says, I'm going to be working on him for an hour or so. So you go talk to the higher self and whatever, and I will be in the background doing some healing. Okay. So then I started asking questions to the higher self, and this will bring in another station now. Okay. This station is called the life selection station. we have discovered, and some of my clients experience this, where they can go back and see how they chose their life. And everybody, it's very similar. Everybody describes the life selection place very similar. It's kind of like being in an IMAX theater, and you're sitting there and there's different screens up there and they're looking at possible lives that they could have. And since everything is in the now, in other words, they'll see a thing of a man walking down the street in New York City and they'll think, oh, yeah, okay, if I had that body and that's the thing and what I want to learn, I think that would be a good selection, or, in his case. So I asked the higher self, I said, well, if you hadn't chosen this life as the man who's sick right now, let's just call him, just for his, privacy here, I'll call him Walter. Okay. So if you weren't going to be Walter, what were your other choices? And the higher self thinks for a minute and says, well, I could have been a young girl who was going to have a bad accident and be paralyzed from the waist down. And I would have had to, be by myself and not be able to move around and everything for the rest of my life. Or, he says, I had another choice. I could have been a soldier. Same result, paralyzed, But instead, I chose Walter because I was hoping that he could learn his lesson and not have to spend his whole life being in a wheelchair, but they could sometime be healed, and still learn the lesson. And I said, oh, that's very interesting, So then I said, okay, Zen, are you there? And Zen says, yeah, I'm still working now. What do you want? And I says, my client really hopes to be healed today. Can you do that? And then Zen says, well, okay, we feel he's learned his lesson, so he's going to get better. And I'm starting the healing process in his body, but it's going to take a couple of years for him. He's still going to be in bed for a couple of years, but he's going to gradually get better because he still needs to integrate what he's learned and really be prepared to decide whether he's going to have some relationships in his lifetime. Afterwards, when I talked to Walter, and Walter goes, oh man, I'm so glad that I can see there's an end to this. But 2 years, and I said, well, that's what they said. So he's going to keep in touch and, we'll be able to know. So in that one session, so many things happen that generally, maybe one of those or two of those things will happen in a session, that way. So in the life selection process there, I've had a number of people go there. And I remember one of them was standing in line and there was other souls, there was lines of things. And it was almost like you were picking out personalities. They're saying, oh yeah, I'm going to have a little of this, I'm going to have a little of that, like a recipe, to be so that you could embody that in that body, because the characteristics that they chose that they would have as that person were all going to be geared towards having the best success at learning what they had to learn. There was one client before, actually, I keep talking about this thing was mine, but it was another colleague of mine. And he talked to me about this years ago, but I'll share that with you too. This client wanted to be a writer. So he picked a lifetime, one of his lifetimes where his family would be rich. He wouldn't have to work. He could just live off of mom and dad, and he came down in that body, but he got sidetracked, all that money and stuff. He got into sex and drugs and he just couldn't, and never became a writer because he just could do anything he wanted to do. And he wasn't disciplined enough to be able to be the writer. So that didn't work on that lifetime. So when he went back, he says, okay, I need a lifetime where I'm going to be kind of forced to do this writing that I need to write. So he picked a lifetime where he would be a young girl. And at a certain time in that lifetime, he would fall out of a horse-drawn buggy and be injured enough to where he would spend the rest of his life in bed and be able to write. And that's exactly what happened in that lifetime. And we couldn't, as much as we tried to get his name right and see if we could look up some books that were written by him or by her, actually, because it was going to be a woman writer. But he said in that lifetime, he was successful. He was able to deepen and learn so much about soul, about people, about how things go through writing. So it's interesting how souls and how we choose the lives that we want to live. Most of us have like a contract in a sense to come down and experience different things. Most of the time, it's very simple. Like I can imagine when Gandhi was, not born yet, and he said, "Well, I'm going to go down and be Gandhi, and I'm going to change the world," or Martin Luther King. Imagine that, choosing that lifetime. Wow, But most of us, when we discover over there, because the list of questions you ask, the main question is, what's my mission? What's my purpose in life? What am I supposed to be doing? Okay. And they'll clarify that for you. Most people find out that they're right in the middle of their mission, but it hasn't been really crystal clear, that this is what their mission is. But now they go, oh yeah, now I can really get into my work and my mission. And I'll, and sometimes they go, well, that's all that I come down here to do. And this one woman says, she said, well, I came down and my whole goal was to practice being patient. Okay, in her life. So she picked a lifetime where she would have a lot of kids, a lot of things. She was having to learn to be patient in her life. So I said, well, how long is this process of learning to be patient? She says, well, I've been coming into a lot of lifetimes, about 500 years, you know. So that shows you how difficult it is sometimes for us to learn to be perfectly patient, in other words, to be godlike in our patience in a way. And I don't know if we ever get there, but we keep, learning little by little by little, that
And,
way.
and I'm kind of interested in your thoughts of, when we, are learning about contracts or lessons that we, pick to learn. If we get our, kind of like a sideway awareness and we're like, oh, I've kind of learned this now. So in the afterlife session, when we're talking with them, can we go, oh, I've actually learned this through this, so can we erase this contract out and maybe sub in another one or take
That's a
a break?
great question. That's a great question too. Now, in my experience with the 500 of these that I've done, somehow we haven't kind of got into that, but excuse me, excuse me, sorry, folks. So, but I have had psychics, mediums, who are friends of mine who talk about people rewriting their contracts, and sometimes, yeah, they learn their lesson sooner than they thought, and so they want to know, well, let me see what else that I can do, and a good friend of mine who's a very good medium. I did a podcast with her for 3 years. Every Wednesday for 3 years we were on there, and boy, she was amazing what she could do. And she talked about having her help people to rewrite their contracts. Now, here's an interesting case. This isn't mine. This is one of Dolores Cannon's. And for the people listening too, I'm certified with Michael Newton Institute as a facilitator, but I'm also certified with Dolores Cannon School of Quantum Healing Hypnosis. And Dolores Cannon and Michael Newton were contemporaries of each other. They didn't know about each other until they discovered it, but they were both doing the same thing. And what was beautiful about that is once they knew each other and they found out what was happening, they found out, okay, this research is not just him. There's somebody else having the same kind of things happen, that way. Dolores Cannon has about 18 books out there. She spells her last name Cannon. If you're looking it up, anybody watching, there's about 18 books. She's the one that wrote the Nostradamus book. She also wrote a book called Jesus and the Essenes. Now, as we're talking, see these things come, we're going to go on all these little segues, which is pretty cool. So I never know what's going to happen. But Jesus and the Essenes came about because she had a client who came in one day for go to a past life regression and see some healing. He found himself as a Jewish person in the Essene community. And it turned out, he found out in the session that he was the teacher of Jesus and St. John the Baptist. Well, she was so in awe of that, like, wow, that's pretty cool. She asked him if he would come back for subsequent sessions so they could delve more into that lifetime. So he came back for a bunch of times, and every time they would find out more and more. And what was fun, one time she had him describe the Essene community, like kind of lay it out so she could see where the meeting hall was, where the eating hall was, where they slept in that. And a number of years later, when they dug up what they think is an Essene community in archaeology, everything was just like he said it was, so it gave her more proof that this was probably real. But he describes Jesus's early life as a child and how different John the Baptist and Jesus was. John the Baptist was a little more like ADDHD, kind of kid. Just yeah, and Jesus was a little different than that, and all the way up through the crucifixion. So the book is a good one. It's called Jesus and the Essenes for people that are, want to get another take on the life of Jesus that way. So, where were we? Okay, back to the contracts part. There was one case also that Dolores had where she found out in the session that the person who came in for the session now was actually not the original soul that was in that body. And what we came to find out was prior to coming into this life, the person who came to her for the session had made an agreement with another soul that because the other soul said, I'm going to go down, I need to learn some things, but it's only going to take me a number of years and then I'm going to be done. And I don't want to commit suicide or something, and I don't want to waste the body. So she asked around and up in heaven, is there anybody else who wants to come in and take over my body to have some things to learn? Another soul made the agreement. So what happened was at a certain point, when she was a young adult, at nighttime, her soul left the body and the other soul jumped in her body. Now that raises a whole ton of questions, which I don't know that, how that worked out. The therapist would probably know more information, but it just shows how souls can, come and go, from the body, and that they didn't want to waste, a perfectly good body, and another soul could make use of that to learn something. So that's just another variation of things. So moving on from the place of life selection, the majority of my sessions, there's three places that it almost always happens in a session, and they're the three big sessions. I mean, the three most important ones. The first is a place of rejuvenation. So we'll call that station the rejuvenation session. And that happens right after okay, let me back up here. To get to the afterlife, we have found out that the easiest way is to have them go into this deep state of relaxation, which is, again, very easy to do. Like I say, about 90% successful. People think that it's like real hard, but there's nothing they have to learn because everybody's is in the same state that they are when they go to the afterlife 2 times a day. Just as you're falling asleep, just at that moment, just a few seconds before you fall asleep, and the first few seconds as you wake up in the morning where you're kind of in a dream, but you're aware that you're waking up, okay? What I do is I have them relax to the point where if I wasn't communicating with them, they would just fall asleep, okay? So that's what we're able to kind of keep them in that state. And once in a while, they do fall asleep a little bit, and I'll know that because they'll stop communicating with me. So I'll tap them on the shoulder and I'll say, can you hear me? Can you hear me? And when they nod their head, then I get them right back to that state. Well, we found out that's where the magic happens, Michael. It's like everybody, when they're in that state, they can easily access past lives and all the things that they've ever been before. So to get to the afterlife, once we get them on the verge of there, I have them direct themselves to a past life, which either their deep subconscious chooses or the higher self or an angel or someone. It's generally a life that when they go back to it, they can feel some kind of similarity or some kind of connection in a way. So it'll mean something to them. So they go back to this past life. We go through a few scenarios or a few scenes of memories they have there, but we want to get them to their death scene. So finally I say, okay, now let's go to the last few minutes of your life as that person and let's see what's happening. Most of the people, I would say 80%, are in beds and they're just old and dying, or they have influenza or some sort of breathing thing, Black Plague or something like this. And the other 20%, hung, shot, stabbed, drowned, all the other ways that you can die. But they're kind of in that body, but yet part of them knows they're going through this process. So it keeps them from being re-traumatized. So they don't have to worry about that. In a few cases, they're so into that body that it feels like they're going to be experiencing it again, but we're trained at that point to give them a choice. I can see on their face if they're starting to go, like something scary is happening. I'll say, okay, now quick, make a choice. You can experience it just like you are, or you can watch it from outside your body. And most people choose to kind of watch it like on a movie screen, and they're telling me, what's happening to their body or what's, how they're dying. Anyway, we're at their funeral or how their body's disposed of. When they feel they're done, and they've sometimes they want to stay around a little bit to let people know energetically that they're okay, like to get themselves in people's dreams, or make the lights flash on and off in their house, or have a bird land on their head, or something where people know, oh my God, that's my dad. He's telling me he's okay. That's a common way that they get through to us from the other side. And so anyway, when I say, are you finished now? Are you ready to go home? And they go, yes. And so I'll say, okay, now you have this memory. Let's find out what happened when you left that body. I want you to rise up above the earth a little bit. And when I count to 3, you'll be at the time and place where there was a guide, your guide was there, or someone to greet you, to, escort you back home. So I'll go 1, 2, 3. And then they'll go, oh my gosh. And there's a guide there, or an angel, or sometimes it's a parent that's passed on, like a mom or dad who's there, and they will escort them to where the guide is or something. But they always, most of the people meet their guide face to face, get their name. They'll find out that the guide's been with them for many, many lifetimes before. It's like a homecoming in a sense, oh my gosh, there's my guide, my friend, kind of thing. So the first thing I ask is, now my client just had a rough life. They just finished and they could use a little R&R. Can you take them to a place to be rejuvenated before they go back home? And instantly they're there. And I'd ask my client, is it inside or outside? And they start describing these beautiful places, Michael. Oh my gosh. I'm just seeing them in my mind because they're describing to me. But man, it's like the ultimate spa. Generally there's water involved somehow, like waterfalls sometimes, or pools of water. Water seems to be a cleansing thing, that they have. So then I'll say to my client, I'll say, okay, I'm going to be quiet for a little bit, and I want your guide there, or a healer that happens to be there, to take you through the process of being rejuvenated. And when you're done, then I want you to speak up and tell me what you're experiencing, because we record all this. And, so much happens, Michael, that they're aware the whole time, but it's just too much to remember, because there's so many fantastic things happen in the time that they're on the other side, which generally ends up being 2.5 to 4 hours. Generally, it's different for everybody. Some people, it's, have a lot more they have to get done over there. But usually 2.5 to 4 hours on an average on the other side, in the hypnosis part anyway. So then in this place of rejuvenation, and now I'm getting a thought here that I should mention this. I can't tell you how many healings have happened, emotional healings, from people that come to me that have a lot of trauma in their lifetime. I'm surprised, Michael, how many of us have experienced in our lifetime some sort of trauma. And we have from either, I call it little PTSD or big PTSD. Some people it's just something, maybe they were in an accident or something at some point in their life that caused trauma, and they still can't get in an automobile, or when they think of it, they still cry because it was so traumatic, or they almost died. Other people have horrific, oh man, Michael. I mean, if I'm in a mall sometimes and I'm just watching people watching, and I'm just seeing all these people walking by, and knowing that a whole bunch of those people are holding in a lot of trauma that they've had in their life sometime that's never been dealt with before. Okay. So I'll give you an example. Since the last time I was here, I think, I don't think I mentioned, if I speak something that I mentioned last time, mention that I already told you that, and I'll switch to something else. But it was so impactful for me to see what the possibilities are of having these sessions. Okay, so This woman came to me, and there were 7 times in her lifetime when she had been violated, okay, physically or sexually, okay, at different times in her life, beginning when she was 5 years old until now she's in her 60s. She was in the military at some point, and a few times happened there, okay, which were very serious. So we're at the place of rejuvenation, and the healer's there to have her go through this process. And I said, hey, let's find out if we can do something here. I said, is it possible for the other 7 hers who were abused to show up for healing? And the healer said yes. And immediately I says, are your other 7 selves there? She goes, yes, they're all here. So she was seeing her 5-year-old self and her teen self and her military self and all this. And when you're in that state, you don't question it. It's just real because it's natural over there, Michael. So they're all there, and it was so beautiful. I says, now you guys need some healing, and you're the oldest now. You're the one that has the wisdom. Okay, so I want you to be the mother to yourself, to these other 7 selves of yours, and go through the process of trying to heal those parts of yourself. Okay, and so I said, I'm gonna be quiet for a while and just enjoy. Tell me when you're done. So about 10 minutes later, I just checked in. I says, can you tell me what's going on? She says, yeah, we're all in this beautiful pool, this healing pool. It's like, she says, we're all circled in this pool, all holding on to each other and all just feeling ourselves just being healed. And we're talking like we're sisters, and stuff. And she's saying, well, just wait till you get older. You're going to go through this. It's going to be good. But anyway, after that, after the session, my client was just telling me like she felt like a tank was lifted off to her, all this emotion she'd been carrying, for all these times when she'd been abused and hurt in her lifetime. And I've had that happen over and over again, especially most of the time it's someone at 5 or 6 or 7 or 8 when they're just little kids and they've had abuse or something, and they're able to take that younger part of themselves into a place of healing that way. One of my clients, it was about some violence that had happened to her. She goes in the place of rejuvenation. It was very serious. This incident she went through, it was way up there on the scale of 1 to 10. It was really bad. So I thought, let's see if we can push this a little further. So when she came out of the place of rejuvenation, I said, ask your guide there if you can do some additional really deep healing that you really, really need. And the guide says, yes. All of a sudden she's in a cave. Okay. And it's like a cocoon or something. She's very comfortable. He says, it's like I'm really healing. It's very great inside here in the cave. And all of a sudden she's looking at her arms and hands, and like blackness or steam is just coming out of her body. And it was all of that pain, all of that, all of the PTSD she had. And it was shooting outside, going out the cave, the entrance to the cave. So when she says, well, I feel so much better now. I says, okay, let's go out to the cave and talk to your guide. So she walks out. The guide is standing there smiling. Actually, it was a female angel, I believe. And there was an emblem around the angel, and it had a see-through like heart, and it was filled with all of that blackness that came out of her. And she goes, oh, I don't want my guide to take on all of my sickness there. And the guide says, no, it's encased in here. It's safe. So it was it was just a beautiful way of her seeing how loved she was, how they want to heal you on the other side, how that angel that had all of that blackness that came from her encased it in her heart. And she says, now I want you to wear this because you're totally safe. It won't hurt you anymore. But it represents, your badge of honor, what you've gone through to become the person that you are. Wow. I thought, man, I'm so glad we just pushed it and wanted to go one step further because, that's what I enjoy in these sessions is finding ways of having things happen that we haven't done before. And there's endless ways. I'm just keep finding more and more ways. And it's so neat. So that's the place of rejuvenation that people get to go through. I've had some people, they're there and there's like a waterfall, and they are instructed to put themselves under the waterfall. So they're there. And I said, is it water? And they go, no, it's light. it's like a waterfall of light with all the rainbow colors just coming through them, purifying, cleansing, cleaning their body. And sometimes they'll say, no, it feels like it's wet, but yet it's light. There's different feelings for people that way. So a lot of things can be done at that place. Now, once we're done, yes.
I have a question before we leave the rejuvenation center, and it's something that I kind of have a curiosity in the back of my mind. Like, we go through life and we get injuries where we have like metal or something in our body, or alternate forms of prosthetics, so to speak, or a surgery done so we're no longer able to do this. But in doing the work and talking with ourselves and going through this rejuvenation, can all of that be altered? And I'm not saying like you wake up with a new leg,
Oh,
instead
I'd
of a
love to answer
prosthetic,
that.
but I'm more referring to is, let's say, someone, because of a trauma that happened to them, no longer can have kids. Well, they cleared that out.
Yeah.
Now, can the body regenerate itself and go, hey, you know what? If you want to have kids, it's now on the
Now
table.
possible. I haven't experienced that with any of my clients, but um, some of Dolores Cannon's books have some, I mean, oh my God, amazing people that right in the session, had just became healed or something happened. In the last 4 or 5 years that I've incorporated, because what I do is I blend the QHHT, which is Dolores Cannon School, I blend it with the Michael Newton one. And that's when, now actually, since I talked to you last time, I have switched from having the healer for physical things show up at the council, and I've been having him show up at this place of rejuvenation because it seems more appropriate. So, for instance, someone gets their emotional things kind of taken care of, but now we have some physical issues to take care of. So I will ask then my client, I'll say, can I have permission to talk to your higher self? So the higher self comes out when they give me permission, and I say, now, higher self, I know that you have the ability to do a body scan and do some healing. Would you like to do that, or would you like to have a healer? Would you furnish a healer for us to come? Most of the time, the higher self says, I'll bring in a healer. And then and a few seconds later, I say to my client, what's the healer look like? And they'll describe, sometimes it's a ball of beautiful energy and they just know it's another being. And sometimes they look just like you and I, I mean, just people, that way. We'll get their name. First thing that we do, I'll say, well, we have a list of things here we want to address that my client has. The first thing we want to ask, and we'll say, okay, she has this problem with this. Can you tell her why she has the illness? That's the biggest thing that happens generally, and almost always happens, where people find out, in a sense, how they've made themselves sick. Okay. Most of the time, our illnesses and things are caused from us being imperfect human beings. Um, we still hold hatred in our heart. We're not forgiving people that we need to forgive. The biggest thing that causes people's illness, of all the things, is not enough self-love. They'll say, the client needs to really work on that. They need to realize that they're an immortal being. They're perfectly imperfect in God's eyes. And it doesn't matter what kind of things they've screwed up in their life or what they've done, that they're beautiful souls, and they need to look in the mirror and be able to tell themselves that, I love you, you're perfectly imperfect. And they're saying a lot of the times they'll give them a formula for healing themselves. It usually has to do with more self-love. Maybe there's somebody that they hate. They says, okay, it's up to you. You can go on ways and try to learn to do your best to forgive those people and to forgive them, and get that hate out of your aura, in a sense, and that'll happen. So sometimes they'll give the clients a formula for how they can get better, and reverse it. And usually they'll say, the healer will say, okay, I'm going into the body and then they'll say, but it won't take effect unless you do the work that you have to do. Now, 2 times though, I have had people healed right in front of my eyes. And Michael, I swear, it's just the the hair stands up on my thing just watching it happen. One was a woman. She came in with a cane. She had a frozen hip. She was in her 60s. She was just about to retire from her 40 years working for some firm. And we found out from the healer said she has created this frozen hip because she's afraid to move forward in retirement. She's stuck. Her mind is so crazy because she doesn't want to move forward, realizing that these people she's known for 40 years, that's her family. That's her work family. She's going to lose them all when she retires, and her husband's retiring. She's going to be spending more time than she wants with him. And she realizes, says, I'm not making him breakfast every morning, kind of thing. So they said that she's just so afraid of moving forward. Her mind has kept her from walking, because she can't move forward. So they talked to her for a little while over there, had a conversation. And then the healer says to me, I think she gets it. I think we've shown her that, from what she senses, she's going to have a wonderful retirement. It's going to work out okay. There's nothing she needs to fear. And the healer says, I think she's got it. And I said, okay, now can she be healed then? And the healer said, yes. So instantly, oh boy, she's right on my couch there. She starts moving around and a big old loud pop, and her hip popped right back in place. Shocked her as much as it did me. So she was able to walk out without a cane. Another client was 84 and had rectal cancer, stage 4. Okay. What they did was they went in and they said, okay, we've begun the healing. We really think that, you don't have too much to do you can, be here for many more years and stuff. And so every year now she must be like 89 now or something. She sends me a text. She says, I'm still here, Regan. The doctor said she'd be dead 5 years ago. She's still here. So that's, I tell people too, anything can happen over there. But in the Dolores Cannon books, there's story after story after story of miracle healings. Of course, those are from thousands, and she's picked out the ones that have actually, experienced a healing, that way too. Now, here's a case that was very interesting too. Of the type of healings that can happen from having these sessions. So a woman came in, she had a birthmark right here on her neck of just a line right here. She found out in a past life she was hung, as a witch. Okay. And so having that realization when she came back, she goes, whoa, I was like a medium back in those days and I could tell the future and I got hung for it, I got killed. And in this lifetime, she was a medium, but she could do it without. And that's what's great about the mediums now. They can just be who they are. They don't have to worry about putting in insane, before then they'd put people in insane asylums. They would kill them. They would, think they were the devil or something, because they could seeing. So anyway, a couple of years later, she sends Dolores a picture of her neck and that birthmark had disappeared, been there all her life. And then just having that awareness of what happened somehow changed her physical body, something, and that disappeared. Here's another segue though. The University of Virginia has been studying children who remember past lives. I might have mentioned it on the other show. I usually try to because it's very interesting. And there's a book by Jim Tucker. It has before in the title. But if you look up Jim Tucker before, it'll come up there. It was published 3 or 4, maybe 5 years ago now. The university has interviewed children who tell their parents that they had another life before. Like, oh, you're not my mom and dad, my other mom and dad, or so and so. Well, they would send a team to interview the children. The children would tell all they could remember. And then they sent people out to see if they could verify what the children said. And they have, I think, several thousand cases now, over 40 years. It's 50 years now, I think. And they published their research. And it's all these ones where children said this stuff. They went, found out, yep, there was people named this. This is how the person died, just like the child said. It's just more and more proof, for people that are still not believing that, we're more than just this. And we've been around for a long time. Speaking about the reincarnation now, Michael, the best way for people to approach this instead of looking like, we have all these, that we have all these past lives, it's better to look at it how the research shows. Research shows we're born one time, not here. We're born over there. In other words, God created us in heaven or the afterlife. What we're doing as soul is we're choosing to have experience. So we choose to come down and have experience as different people, there's different lives than that, to kind of, it's like going to extra credit or grad school to make the souls even more loving and more godlike in a sense. So you have one life with many bodies. That's a little easier way to understand it rather than the opposite, that way. So when people start looking at it like that, they go, okay, I can go that. It does say in the Bible that in the womb, God already knew me. I forget the exact quote, but it's like, there's a thing that says in the womb, God already knows you, because you're created on the other side. Okay. And that segues into a couple of sessions I had where people, when they got into deep trance, they went through the tunnel out to the other side. They were not in other lifetimes. They found themselves back to source. And the best way I can explain it is they felt like godlike, eternal, like they were a piece of God. I mean, no body. They were conscious part of God, like a pebble of God, or like say one thread in a big tapestry. Okay, that's part of the whole thing. And in those cases, when that happened, they'd end up not being disappointed that they didn't go to the council, they didn't go to the soul group or anything. Their whole session was just experiencing what it was like when you go all the way back to the very beginning. And they don't want to come back. Sometimes it's like they go, oh my God, they're just saying this is the most love I've ever felt in my life. I feel like I can just feel there's zillions of souls all around me and I'm part of them and they're part of me. um, you never know what in store for you, but everybody kind of has like all the sessions are very similar, but it's like a template, that you can put everybody in where they have these different things they do. But because every soul is at a different stage of evolution, every session is amazing. And it's like me, reading a new book every week, and it's about someone's life, and it's like just fascinating, that way.
So I have an interesting question, and it deals with, I know there are people who experience such a huge trauma that they're like, I can't ever forgive this person for this. And I'm wondering if there's a way they can go in the afterlife and heal the trauma, and they don't necessarily have to forgive that person or even deal with that person. So can they still do the healing work and get the healing and the blessing without involving that person?
Yeah. I've not experienced that. That would be like a shortcut. It would be nice. Most of the time, because the learning comes in, you suffer the abuse that happens, and then to make it go full circle, you finally wake up to what that abuse has taught you. Now, you're never, in a sense, forgiving the act that person did. When you forgive someone, you're not saying, "Oh, it was okay for them to do that to me," in a way. That creates their own karma and stuff like that. But what you're doing is saying, okay, I had this experience or whatever. I'm not going to let that define my life anymore. I'm gonna forgive that person because I need to be healed. I had a gentleman recently. He was a doctor from San Diego, and he had a really bad relationship with his father. And so he's on the other side. We find his father, and I say, now, his father's still alive. I says, you have a chance right now talking to your father's higher self to work things out. And he's in trance, and he goes, no, I'm not going to do that. No, 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 no. And so I said, okay, let's just talk about this for a minute. You're never going to find a safer place. I said, you're in a safe place right now. Nothing can happen to you. And you're going to be talking to a better part of your father than the part it's on earth here. And he finally said, okay. So he went over, he's talking to his father for a while. And his father was telling him, said, son, what you don't realize was you asked me to be this kind of father when I came down because you needed to learn certain things. And I can't remember exactly what that was. But afterwards, when we were talking, he realized, wow, you know what? I have become a better person because of that abuse I went through, because that caused me to do certain things in my lifetime where I ended up having more compassion towards people and more patient towards people, because when I realized, how difficult this was. And there was a few other lessons in there, and I'm sorry I don't remember those right now, all these things going on. But then I said, now, can you forgive your father? You're right there with him now. Or can you begin to? And the most he could do was, he says, I will begin. And I says, okay. Ask your father if you can do a handshake, saying you're both going to work on it. Both going to work on improving your relationship from this time out and letting bygones be bygones. And so hopefully by the time your dad passes, that you will have been through this process. And that's what they're doing right now. So he's slowly back in the physical world now, and having his father enter his life and beginning. He said it's a process. It's not. I told him. He says, gosh, there's still times, man, when I just, you know, and but I'm learning, getting there. So he's a work in progress. So, but that's a good question, and I'm not saying that it can't happen. There might be cases when that happens, but I've not experienced that before.
Yeah.
Boy, our
I only
lives.
ask because I know there are some people who are like, yeah, I don't think I could ever be healed from this because I don't want to do this. And so I was thinking if they could hear there is a way around that, then more people may go, oh, well, then let me start this healing process. And,
Yeah. Well,
you
they should
know,
have a session. Yeah, if they had a session with me, Michael, we could because when I get them into trance and get them away from their physical mind in a way to their deeper self, okay, they're more able to see things from a higher perspective, and they can see the possibilities that can happen. So just like this doctor I was talking to you about, it would be a great way. It would be a great way to uh, to begin the process of doing that. Um, so anyway, so yeah, I would say that they could do that. One session I had too was with a woman who had a father who was he wasn't physically or sexually or anything abusive to her, but he never ever held her. He never told her once that he loved her. He was just always there, and he was very strict, like a sergeant. Do this, do that all the time. And so she was always wanting to feel that something from her father, but she never did. She was beginning, and she was in her 60s. Excuse me, she was in her 40s. Her dad was in the 60s, and they were just beginning on the phone and everything to have some meaningful conversations. The father dies of a heart attack. So reason she came to me, she says, I'm just beginning, and now I still don't have my father. So we went in around. Oh, this is a very interesting session. I've never had another one just like this before, but it was almost like a movie. So we get her into trance. She's out of her body. She goes to the past life, passes away. We get to the afterlife, and we're talking to the guide, and we're saying, well, main thing she's here, she wants to find her father that passed away. So all of a sudden, she finds herself on this platform. It was like the way she described it was like a railway platform where everybody's waiting for the train to come. And everybody there had brown robes on, like monk robes, okay? So she starts going between the people, and she goes, does anybody know where my dad is? Blah, blah, blah. So a soul came up to her and said, well, he's not here. Maybe he's further up. So all of a sudden she rises up above that. She's on another place, almost identical, but everybody's wearing blue robes. Okay, this is interesting. So now we said, we're looking for her father. Is he here? And they said, no, he's not here, but maybe this way. So I said, okay, just lift up above that, because she's in heaven. So she rises up above that. All of a sudden she sees this door that's opening up. It's just a door, like, in midair, but it was kind of opening up. And I said, let's go and see what's on the other side of the door. So she floats her soul through this door, and then she starts crying. I said, "What's on?" She goes, "There's my dad. There's my dad, and I don't understand what's happening." And I said, "Why? What's your father doing?" She said, "He's smiling at me." She'd never felt a smile that love from her dad ever. And here she sees her dad up there. Her human self now can't, this doesn't seem right. My dad's smiling at me. He never smiled at me before. I said, "That's your dad. That's your higher self. That's just him back and soul." I said, you are going to have a great reunion with dad. I want you to kind of float over to him a little bit and just start having a conversation. I'm going to be quiet. I'll be in the background for a while. I want you to speak to dad and ask him some of the things, like, why was he that kind of father to you? Why did you have to endure that and not having a father that way? So anyway, I'm quiet for a little while, and she starts talking. She goes, "Oh my God, he's holding me right now." And I said, "Yeah." I said, "This is your real dad."
Your audio cut out, Regan.
Oh, sorry about that. Are we back now?
You're back.
Okay. So he says to her again, he says, "Daughter, you told me when you picked me to be your father, and you told me that you wanted me to be the kind of father that would be alienated from you because you wanted to learn in this lifetime how to set boundaries. You wanted to learn to be a strong woman because you other relations you've had in other lifetimes, you've been so codependent on everybody. You wanted to come down and learn to be, your own boss and learn to do this." We're talking about it after the session, and she says, uh, "I've become that woman." She says, I'm good at setting boundaries. I can do anything on my own. I love my life. I've done good." And she's realizing that wouldn't have happened unless she'd have been alienated from her father that caused her to make certain choices in her life to become a strong woman and everything. So it was so healing in that session. She was smiling on her way out. She goes, "Oh my God, now when I think of my dad, I'm seeing who I just saw, rather than who he was before." So that's another way and another beautiful story of healing that can happen over there, Michael. Um, Now, how long is your podcast? How long are people listening to this?
Uh,
How long does it go?
I usually tend to go an hour and a half, but
Okay.
if we're in the middle of something, I'll push it longer. And I've actually done 2 hours
Yeah.
or a
Okay.
little bit over two, so don't
Well,
feel rushed. You got
okay,
time.
good. Yeah, because I'm saying, as you can see, and as things happen here, we go on these little segues and these little. I love talking about some of these cases, and I always do it confidentially, because most people don't care. They say, "Oh yeah, I'll tell anybody about it," but I just want to be sure that their privacy is that way. So sometimes I'll change the circumstances slightly, or the country they're in, or something like that. But it's good for other people to hear, because when people are hearing these stories, they're thinking right now, people that are listening, and they're thinking about their life. They're thinking about the trauma they might have had, or the difficulties, or what the heck did I sign up for here? Or they're like, "No, that can't be possible. I would have never signed something to come into this life and have to put this up here." But
Right.
people, time and again, they find out that, this was all, part of the experience. But once you realize that you're an eternal soul, that you never die, all of a sudden you go, "Okay, maybe I can get through this hard course right now." So when I went the second time and I have my counsel again, I said to the council, I said, "Why are you allowing us to do this? This is so awesome." I mean, people are like getting transformed by coming and seeing heaven for a few hours. And my main council member, who was a Chinese master or whatever, his name is Late C. And he had just actually, I remember, I'm seeing him in my mind now, because when I was there, and it was such, when he looks at me, his eyes are so full of love. You get love bombed, and you just want to laugh, because he's just got so much love coming from him. And I remember when I came the second time there, and he's sitting down, and then he stands up, and he has a new robe that he's showing me, and he stands up and he's like modeling it for me. He says, "What do you think? How do you like this? And it was like a Chinese robe that was mostly the back was red, but there were black and it was all these intricate designs, like artwork that was on him there, And he was just laughing. He was playing with me there or something. So I said, let's see. I said, why are you allowing us to do this? And first of all, he says, we want to thank you, Regan, for bringing people here because, and everybody else in your organization that's doing this, because this is really important for people. 3 things we want people to learn in their sessions, 3 main things. First of all, to prove to people that heaven is real. Second of all, to prove that their life is not a mistake, that they are down in this body and having experience for a reason. Okay. And the third thing is that them to realize that they are never alone. Okay. You always have people from the other side watching over you, guiding you, trying to guide you along the way. There's a spiritual law of non-interference in a sense, in the fact that, they can't, most of the time, it's like until people become aware and open their side spiritually, you're missing about 90% of the your intuition you're not acting on, because that's where you're getting the soul knowledge that you need to do something and then you don't do it, or you even miss it altogether because you're just not aware. Once people open up, like I've had people write me years later and they'll just talking about how they've become like psychic in a way, because once you open and crack open and the light starts coming in from the other side, after these sessions, you're forever shifted onto a better path. And so for some people, these sessions, it just transformed their lives immediately. For most people, it takes them years to slowly integrate little by little everything that they've learned in this one session they go through. But they can constantly feel how they're being molded and shaped. They find out that they're listening to their inner voice more, and following that. But hundreds and hundreds of God sightings happening where they'll need something, boom, all of a sudden something will happen and there it is. We've all kind of seen those. You probably had those in your life, Michael, sometimes where, in a way you're kind of in a sense praying, oh gosh, I need this or that. And then all of a sudden there it is,
Yeah.
that way, or you manifested it, So that's what's good about these sessions. So besides that, people get healing. They get to reunite with people. So, people that have passed on, oh boy, and we talk about the higher selves of people. I'll get into that in a minute. That's a whole other wonderful kind of thing to do. So all those things are possible. Okay, I guess I should talk about that now. Okay. One of the highlights for people in the session is not only talking to people that passed on, the higher selves of people still alive in their life, even pets. Oh my gosh, people that have had pets that passed on were like their children. They're in grief. So many people are so close to their pets, and that we usually outlive our pets, So at some point you have to, take them to have put down because they're so sick, or they just die. And people are devastated. Those are loving souls in those bodies that they're so close to. It's losing somebody important. On the other side, every single time people have requested to talk to their pets that have passed on. I haven't had one where they didn't show up. They always show up. And I love that part of the routine, the thing, because people are crying sometimes. They're just like, oh my God, they're jumping all over me, and they're talking to them. Oh my gosh. Recently, I had a woman, she had 2 pets right now, 2 dogs. She loves them like her kids. And so I said, well, let's talk to them. So they showed up, and and so I said, well, ask them how you're being. How are you? Are they love you being their mom? How's their food? They like the food you're treating them. And then the one dog comes up to her and says, Mom, you're giving him too much attention and not me enough lap time, and she's entranced and she goes, oh God, that's so true. I'm just favoring the other one a little bit. So afterwards, she said, I'm going right home and I'm putting him on my lap, and everything. So that's really good too. So that's, anyway, segued into that. Pets are an important thing for some people in the sessions. So at some point, I asked to talk to the higher self. The higher self comes out. Sometimes at the place of rejuvenation, we do this, but more than likely, sometimes it happens at the council and we get their questions answered. And then I say, now that they've got their questions answered about their life, can I speak directly to your higher self? Higher self comes out and they'll say, now to the higher self, I said, am I talking to the higher self? Yes. Okay, good, good. And then I'll say, you had a plan, you had a contract to come down and accomplish certain things. Can you tell the lower self right now, which is going to hear this on the recording and hear it now, how's he doing? Is he on track? Or has he kind of slid off the wagon a little bit, needs to get back on? When people listen to the recording, it's hilarious sometimes because the higher self is like reading the riot act. It's like, he's doing pretty good here, but you know what? His diet is horrible. If he's going to take care of that physical body, he needs to change his diet. I mean, and like now, and he's not exercising enough. That he needs to get to the gym, because if he's going to accomplish his mission, he's got to get that body healthy. And people listen to that and they go, "Oh my gosh, that's my higher self chewing me out." But it's all done in love. It's all done in love and light, that way. So now, um, I asked the higher self, I said, can you give him some advice? The council's given him some advice. What would you like to see him or her do, in the remaining years that they have left? And the higher self will be talking and well, you probably should take another class on this and learn this. He still needs to forgive Uncle Michael for, that awful thing that happened. He's got this stuff to do. So you can get a lot of help from the higher self that way. But what I really like to do now, as I say, I want this to be so impactful. So when they come out of this session, they really feel that this really, really happened, because some people go, well, was it my imagination or what's happening? I don't know how this could be happening. I says, I want you to step in front of your lower self here so the lower self can see what you look like and describe the higher self. So the higher self steps in front of him and I'll ask my client, what do you look like? Oh boy, it's so cool. Sometimes they see themselves like in body form like this, usually younger, healthier, more vibrant, but a lot of times what they're seeing is themselves as soul. And what we found out, when we are back to the basics of who we are, we're just balls of energy, Michael, different colored swirling energy, conscious energy. And so sometimes they'll say, oh my God, I'm swirling this purple and yellow and green. It's so wow, And so then I ask the higher self, may your lower self have permission to walk into you to see for just a moment what it feels like when he's back home totally into his higher self. Higher self always says yes. So I say 1, 2, 3, just kind of walk into your higher self. So when they do that, oh my gosh, I love their reactions sometimes. I had a good friend of mine, I've been trying to do a session for him for years, and he finally said, okay. I said, I'm gonna do it for you for free because we're best friends, okay? Oh my gosh. He's there when he walked his higher self. I'll never forget. He was almost yelling so loud. I could not. He was just going, wow, my God, wow, oh, wow. It was like he just felt that energy. I says, do you feel more whole now? And he goes, yes. Do you feel like you have more kindness in you? Yes. More compassion, more patience in you? Yes, yes, yes. And he didn't want to leave. He goes, do I have to leave? And I go, yep, you got to leave. You got to come back out of your higher self because you got work to do. But it's that's the extreme that I've seen in reaction. But usually people say, oh man, oh, I just feel so good. I don't have any problems, do I? I said, nope. And then I'll put the post-hypnotic suggestion into their brain. And I'll say, okay, when you come out of this now in the next few weeks and going on and for the rest of your life, when you have a problem that comes up in your life, first of all, because you've had the session, you're going to know that you're not being cursed. This is an opportunity to learn something with that problem you have. So look at it as a learning experience. If you're having difficulties, I want you to close your eyes, remember and put yourself right back in your higher self again, and just stay there in your mind for a little while. And then make a decision, okay? Because you know that when you're coming from your higher self, you're more apt to make the correct decision, to make a more wise decision and a more loving decision. So I'm just hoping me putting that in their, in their consciousness that that's going to happen, So that's something that I've added in the last year. And I thought, hey, why not do that? Try to, because in regular hypnotherapy, we give post-hypnotic suggestions, that, okay, next time you reach for a cigarette now, you're going to want to throw up, or something. And that's funny. That's one way of getting people to stop smoking, is you put all these triggers in their mind that, or if they're going to, when they put the cigarette in their mouth, it's going to taste like crap, or you're going to want to gag. Although that I know a colleague of mine that backfired. He had a a husband who brought his wife in because she was drinking an average of 24 beers a day.
Oh
Okay,
wow.
that means she's got a beer in her hand all day long. Okay, and he said, I'm going to leave her if she doesn't quit this, and they tried everything else, nothing worked. Maybe hypnosis will work. So after 3 sessions, she's still drinking like crazy. He says, I'm paying for all this. To the hypnotherapist, says, I'm pissed. He says, if you don't do something, get her stop smoking, then forget it. I'm not having her come back again. So the therapist thought, well, man, what can I do? And he says to her when she's in trance, she goes, okay, anytime now that you think of drinking a beer or you have a beer in your hand, you're going to have to run to the toilet. Okay. 3 days later, her husband calls up, says, she's sitting on the toilet all day. So that shows you how powerful suggestions can work and people's mind can be changed. But there,
Yeah.
he hadn't thought it out, so that's just a humorous way of what can happen. But it shows you how the brain's programmable, that way too. Now, at this
Well,
point,
it
too, I should.
also though it also
Sorry.
shows in a way the power of what that means to her is more powerful than you saying you're not gonna want it. There's something about it that's
I know.
making that more. So yeah, it's
Well,
interesting.
think about it, Michael, too. People that smoke, they know when they put a cigarette in there that they're damaging their body. I mean, it's proven. Everybody knows. Going to give yourself cancer, or get sick putting smoke in your lungs and everything. You're probably not going to, chances are you're not going to live as long as other people. You're going to start developing all the sicknesses, but what do they keep doing it? So that shows too, again, how the mind can be controlled by things sometimes. And so that's why, and hypnosis doesn't work for everybody. Like when people come in to stop smoking, lose weight, I would say for the majority over 3 or 4 or 5 sessions, they're able to conquer it, pretty good. But for some people, there's been some people come in to stop smoking 1 session. They might have been 3 packs a day and they do 1 session. They never smoke again in their life. We have hundreds in the university that I went to, hundreds and hundreds of cases like that, where people 1 session, boom, because that means some people are so suggestible that when they're in that state and you talk to the subconscious and you tell it to change, it does. So, but other people, one woman came into I went to HMI's Hypnosis Motivational Institute in Tarzana, California. They're the largest hypnotherapy college in the country, accredited. So, you can get student loans and stuff to go there for anybody that wants to do this like I did. You can go there. They even have online courses now. Anyway, this one woman so she didn't want to pay for her session, so she would volunteer to come in and be hypnotized in front of a class for to train so people could see what it was like. So it's when I was new there, and she's having a little bit of an argument with the hypnotherapist, saying, okay, I came here a year ago now, or over a year, and I've done about 50 sessions now. I come in like clockwork, and you put me up here in front of there, and I'm still smoking. Like, what's going on? He says, well, let me look at your file here. He says, well, you were two and a half packs a day, right? When you came in? Yeah. He says, how many cigarettes did you smoke yesterday? And she thought for a minute. She goes, oh, I just had 1 cigarette yesterday. So he says, well, it is working to a degree, isn't it? And she goes, okay, let's do it. She realized that she was just hardcore that way, but she'd gone from 2.5 packs a day to just a few cigarettes a day. So, in a way it was working, but just not, perfectly. So it's not a perfect science. Now, when I have people come into sessions, I had one today that I did earlier today, a really beautiful Russian woman. And she has trouble visualizing. And it's very hard for her to visualize, but she uses her other senses. And when people have trouble visualizing now, they are more difficult, but many times I've had success. But sometimes they're the ones that are more difficult because they, I don't know how to say this, but it's, so much of it is visual, in their minds, what they're seeing and everything like this. So she got to a past life today, which is she was a little girl, maybe 5 years old, wearing a white dress with it had some like yellow pattern to it or like this. She found herself eating at the table, but she could feel 3 people at her table around her, but she couldn't see anybody. But she could taste the food. I said, what are you eating? And she goes, oh, it's hot food. It's like chicken. and I'm having that, and she could smell everything in there, and that's about as far as we got. So afterwards, she says, "Well, I don't know. Was I just making that up? It felt real." And I said, "It probably was real, because you're just seeing this in your mind, and here, that's happening that way." So anyway, she's going to come back for another session in a couple months. I gave her some homework to do and everything, but I'm used to that because it happens about 10% of the time. So the good news is, I don't know what it is, Michael, but when people come back for a second session that were not successful the first time, most of those are successful, almost all of them. As something happens, something shifts, and then all of a sudden, boom, they just go there or something. So and what I do too, if people need a second session, I cut my fee in half. And then for some people that I really, just special people now, if we're not successful in the second one, I do a third one for free for them, just in really hardcore cases, because I don't want them to give up, because I know that everybody can do this. It's just a matter of allowing it to happen. As I said, nothing you have to learn. You go through this process every time you go to sleep or take a nap. And it's just allowing the body to relax until you just about fall asleep. And that's all there is to it. So it's not something like Twilight Zone-ish or something. And the fact that people are aware through the whole process that they're going through it, it's just that they're able to split off into two separate things. It's like having a split screen, you're looking over here and then you're telling me what's happening. And then you're going back to here, back and forth like this. But in that state, it's just natural and it's pretty easy for most people that way. So now I want to cross off rejuvenation. We talked about the life selection place. Let me go a little bit more because it's what most people are curious about. And that's the counsel. Okay. Now, almost up to a person, everybody has had a counsel. It just seems to come with what they plan over there. They want people to get questions answered that are bothering them, questions to help them to clarify what their mission is, what their life's all about. So they're more than happy to answer any questions. Usually people have about 10 to 15 questions, although I had one early this year. She had like 6 pages of questions. That was a really long session. She had so many questions about so many things. But mostly people want to know, what the heck? Why am I here? Why did I decide to do this? And what am I supposed to be doing? And am I on track or off track? How many lives have I lived before? What's my degree of spiritual understanding of the whole picture? Am I just beginning? Am I intermediate, or am I more advanced in my understanding of things? All these questions we ask and get those answered. But people have questions that they have specifically for them, and it's usually about relationships. Like, why am I married to this person that sometimes I want to kill? What's going on here? What's our past? Why are we having such a hard time? Or why is my son, why can't I help him? He's on drugs and alcohol and he's in a mess and I'm afraid he's going to die. Why is that happening? What can I do? Those sort of things. And they'll ask about jobs. Oh, they're really happy. They've given really good advice to people. It's kind of like having a council of the most wise life coaches you can imagine, that have more insight because they know you. Okay. So they can really give you some good advice. Some people are thinking about moving. Now, sometimes, well, I would say 25, 30% of the time. And they'll say, well, we could give you that answer, but we don't want to give you that answer because you need to have the learning of discovering what that answer is for yourself, because that's where the learning comes in. And they go, I had a priest a few weeks ago came to me. I did this the second session. He had a blowout, amazing session. When I say priest, he was a priest for 10 years and he left the priesthood because he realized he needed to be married. He wanted to have a relationship, be married, that just being celibate and being a priest was not working for him. Okay. And he was, good enough to talk. He left on good terms and everything, but in the parish that he was in, he was counseling people all the time and he was seeing relationships and stuff. And he goes, you know what? I think God wants me to have a relationship, not, this, but an amazing man. He had charisma. Oh my gosh, it was amazing. And he flew from West Virginia both times. I'm in California for people out there now. Oh, also too, half of my sessions are done on Zoom with the same success rate as in person. But some people just want to be person to person. They don't want to do it on Zoom. And if they have the means, I have a lot of people fly in from other countries, from other states, and they want to just do it in person, and they can do it. So anyway, he had some amazing philosophical questions to ask Jesus about. And he mainly wanted to find out, why did you have me be a priest if I wasn't going to continue being a priest? And now I'm married, and he's talking directly to Jesus at this point. Oh, he didn't have a guide. He had Jesus. In other words, when he passed away in the lifetime that he had, turns around and Jesus was there. And I'll tell you, it was so cool. They were like two buddies. I mean, they could go and have a beer anytime. I mean, Jesus was talking to him just like you and I are talking. He was funny. He was just so to the point and so loving. And Jesus and I said to Jesus, I said, should he go to the council to get his question answered? And Jesus said, I'll take care of it. That was so cool. So Jesus is talking and answering his questions about this. So what he found out was that this was all planned, that him being a priest was to help him to prepare for what his main mission is going to be. Because being a priest, he learned how to connect with people. He learned how to speak. He learned how to command a huge audience, right? And he learned about the human spirit, about the pain and everything going through, because he counseled so many people that were going through horrible things. And he said he had such success at that, and people loved coming to his church and his sermons because he was so, he wasn't fuddy-duddy. He was just, so real into this world, earthy. Yeah, he was actually he quit SEAL training, to be Navy SEAL. At some point, he just realized when he's going through everything, it wasn't because he flunked out. He just realized, no, this isn't it, So he had that kind of training, pilot training. So he's, he can fly planes as a pilot. He's, Navy SEAL. And then his passion now is cave diving. Oh my gosh. He said, talk about putting your life on life at risk every time you do something. They go down deep for hours down under the earth in these caves underwater. Mainly he spent the last couple of weeks in Florida cave diving. He says it's the most exhilarating thing he's ever experienced. And he was telling all about a couple of close calls he had and how something helped to save his life a few times, because he's really good at the training and what you have to do and everything goes. Anyway, so here's the bottom line to that. I had him, lately in the last couple of years, I've been having certain clients, I've been having them go into the future to see what their lives are going to be like if they make the changes that the council suggests to them. So I want to empower, I want them to see that in their mind, just to give them motivation, because you know how hard it is for people to change, even though they get that and the council tells them some people don't want to do the work. So I asked the council, I'll say, can my client now go into the future a little bit and see what their life could be like if they make these changes they're suggesting? And the council says, sure. So I says, okay, client, you're going to decide how far in the future you go. 1, 2, 3, you're now in the future. And to the man, everybody has said how good it feels, how they feel free, how they feel more connected to things, how their relationships are so beautiful, how they're happy in life, even if they still have issues and stuff they're dealing with. They just love life that way because the council told them what they needed to get that kind of life, that way. So it's possible too, because there's no time and space, as I was mentioning over there. And I'm wondering, these things take so much time to do, and I do maybe 3 sessions a week. And altogether, the sessions are, 4 to 6 hours each. But I spend time preparing, time afterwards, and then there's the time of getting the clients. So I'm pretty much working full time. But in the last week, I spent 2 days. We had a Zoom conference with Michael Newton people from around the world. And there was so much that happened, and I had in my notes to bring up, but I didn't. And I wanted to ask, I said, has anybody pushed this to find out, more things we can find out? Like, can we have a client that's highly hypnotizable, on the other side, and take care of their information, and then say, okay, now we want to do some research here, and you're there, and say, okay, who's the president in 4 years? Or what's happened to Trump, eventually, or whatever. Or
Right.
have the aliens come, if they go 10, 15 years in the future, are there aliens walking around among us? And um, I haven't done any of that, because my main concern is their lives and what they want to do now to have the kind of life that they meant, to know what they're supposed to be doing down here, and let the rest of us come. But I don't know, maybe we can solve crimes. Can we talk to a person that died and say, hey, who killed you? And then, okay, give us some information that the police will believe. I can't just say, oh, I just talked to him in heaven and he said that so-and-so killed me. And, you can't do that. But I did have a client that came to me because the official report on their death certificate was suicide by her daughter. And she's a friend of the family's. Okay. And she says, my daughter was having the best time of her life. She had this relationship. She was getting ready to go on a big trip. Oh my gosh, she was just so happy. I just can't see her being, I talk to her almost every day, and I didn't pick up any signs of anything. So we get her to the other side. Her daughter shows up, and this is what her daughter says to her mom. She says, Mom, I didn't kill myself, not on purpose. She said, I told my boyfriend that I was breaking up with him. He went and got a gun. He was going to shoot himself. And I tried to grab it away from him, and I accidentally shot myself. She said, Mom, that's what happened. She says, don't go talking to him or anything. I'm just fine over here, as you can see. But it was an accident. Oh boy. When she came out of that session, she was so relieved. But in other words, for science purposes, if we were doing stuff like that and trying to prove that you can do that thing, I would try to have somebody off the street who doesn't even know her come contact that soul over there, see if they get the same, answers. That would be, we'd have to do stuff like that. So I don't, we're still in the infancy of this. When Michael Newton passed away, he said, you therapists that I've trained now, train more and more people, and just keep pushing everything. Find out everything you can do. Find as much as you can about the afterlife. He says, don't get stuck in my protocol. He says, keep expanding it. And that's what we're doing, so we keep doing that. What we added, and at least I added 3 years ago, I asked the question, I say, how many lives they lived before? And they find out. I say, ask the council, have you ever lived a life on another planet or in another dimension? And about 30% of the time, people go, yes. And I go, wow. And I'll ask the council, I said, now we're doing this research here about this alien stuff. So I said, council, can my client leave the council for a little bit and take me to the planet that they're from or that dimension so we can get an idea, a description of what it's like? They always say yes. And all of a sudden, 1, 2, 3, boom! I'm getting these amazing planets that they're describing. They're so different than Earth, and life forms, that they are and how they're doing it. And we're finding out that the universe is teeming with sentient life, Michael. I mean, all kinds of life forms, big and small, um, other types, a lot of bipedal where there's hands and legs and stuff, but all different sizes, all different kind of, like the feline planet I talked to you about. And, then there's the reptilians. I've had 2 people in the last year now, Michael, and this is what made it real. Drove down to Los Angeles to do 5 sessions in a week. So I had a man come to me. He goes into a past life. He's a reptilian. And oh my gosh, he was, oh wow. He was saying when he was in that body, he was saying, oh my God, I feel like Superman. He says, I like this, he says, I like this, he was feeling powerful and like, don't mess with me, kind of thing. I had him take me to his planet, and the planet, this is the thing about how he found out he's a reptilian. He goes through the tunnel to the past life. I have him put his hands out in front and say, what color's your skin? And his face, I can see his eyes, like he's going, oh my God, I look like a lizard or something. I got like lizard hands. And they're solid, but then they're not solid. And he was looking at like his hands were solid, and then they were like a holograph. They go back and forth, like shape shifting, back and forth, back and forth. So anyway, long story short, I said, when I count to 3, you're going to take me to where you're from for your planet. He's above the planet as we're kind of like we're on like a ship just kind of landing as he's kind of taking me to his planet. His whole his whole earth, or his whole world was the same way. It was solid, and then it was kind of like a hologram. It's solid and hologram. So he lands there. I have him go to an important thing. What do you do? what's your job here? He was a teacher, and he was teaching. He had a lot of students. They were other reptilians, young reptilians. He was teaching them how to manipulate energy, how to shapeshift, how to use their bodies, and things like this. So I said, now let's go to an important event in your life. He was before like a council that was sending him off on a journey, and like knighting him, like, you're going on a wild journey. And I said, where did they send you to? And he said, he was Earth back in the dinosaur times, and it was about scouting the planet for, maybe they were going to, reptilians were going to live on it at some point. And he's in trance, and he's that reptilian, but he kept saying, ah, so beautiful. Oh my God, the oceans, the mountains, the forests, the flowers. Oh my God, this is so beautiful here. It was something. So when we're done talking the session, he says, Regan, I didn't come here looking for that. That was like, how the heck? He says, but wow, something, so, all these possibilities and stuff. I, I don't know, did last time that I talk about all the other aliens and stuff? I don't know if I did, but at another time I could talk, because it's happening more and more now. And I think it's right in step with, everybody can tell that the grown-ups are coming.
Yeah, I think we kind of hinted at it, and you were
Yeah.
just starting, and so you didn't have much about it, but you were like, yeah, the possibilities there.
Yeah, it's
And
happening more and
so,
more. And I'm just, and especially when it surprises my clients, they go, well, no, that's not my imagination. I can't be, because it's not even in my thoughts, something like that. But recently I had on the council for people, there was, I think 5 or 6 council members, and one of them was a tall gray with the big eyes and everything. So the first thing I says, I walk up to the council there and ask the alien, why is he on your council? Because this is kind of unusual. And the alien said, just to show you that everybody comes back home here, you know. So, it was interesting, because that's what's beautiful about this, because when aliens come or whatever happens here, what's behind, everything. And
right.
that's where this is, when you get back to source and everything, and you can see everything and kind of look out and see that souls are all over the universe having experiences that are too many to number,
Well, in
that way.
metaphysics, it's interesting because in metaphysics terms, everything is connected. Everyone is connected.
Mm-hmm.
And so every experience is connected. And so it's one thing to say that and kind of be like, yeah, okay. But it's another, like you're saying, when you're sitting in this council and you have humanoids, you have angels, you have
Yeah.
different species of beings there, and going, we're all coming home. It's like a second validation of, yeah, this
Yeah.
principle is true. This is
And that's
the
it, Michael. Yeah.
reality.
Uh-huh. And a number of times, without me asking the question, my clients have, I'll ask a question and they'll say, it's almost the same sentence, says, well, I'm part of all this. All this is part of me, kind of thing. And they're in that knowingness, when they're there, So that's interesting. So yeah, I'll because I'm piling these up. So if another 6 months, if I'm back again, if you have me back, we'll talk about the alien thing, because it's getting more and more in the news all the time too. So it'll be more appropriate and everything. But just to let people know that the research is showing that for sure we're not alone, and that we it's time for us to wake up to that, to the bigger picture.
Well, and
So
what's interesting too is a lot of people are channeling information, and a lot of the beings are saying, we're here amongst you. We're already
uh-huh.
here.
Oh, okay.
And
Yeah.
now that your research is showing they're here.
Yes.
They're interacting. So it's like, yeah, we are experiencing it, but it's like they say, we're only showing up to the select few because they're open to it. And which is kind of along the lines of what you're saying is these people have the awareness of, so they're experiencing it, and the people that don't have the awareness
Yeah.
aren't.
That's true. Um, even if the aliens come down and they have a press conference and bring them out that way, there are still going to be a lot of people that still won't believe it. They'll say, "Oh, that's all AI," because if they're not ready yet, They just won't, but a lot of people, and okay, here's what my understanding now is there's a shift going on in the world, and us as a species are having the opportunity to choose. Are we ready to go to a higher vibration, a higher frequency, or do we want to stay where we're at? And from what I understand, that the people that aren't ready yet will just stay, but it's almost like an Earth there'll be like a second Earth. We won't even, it's not like you'll notice it, but it's like it'll be part of the same Earth, but you won't be part of their experiences. You won't be part of all the negativity and all of that, but you'll be in a higher viewpoint that has more love and kindness. Some of these concepts I still don't quite grasp, but I know that they're there and I can feel, that this is kind of happening. So in a sense, it's like we're getting to choose, do we want to go towards the light, or do we want light and love, or do we want to go down the rabbit hole of fear and negativity? Fear is that's the big thing holding people back from ascending, is just fear about so many things. um so I had the thought, and it was about when we were talking about so there's a book people can get out there called, I think it's called The Four Waves of the Volunteers. It's a Dolores Cannon book. She, in a lot of her sessions over the years, a lot of the people that came to her sessions found out that they were new to the earth, that they were aliens that decided to incarnate on physical earth to help us through the transition that's going to be happening. And a lot of them have a really hard time being on earth. They did not realize how thick it is here, how dense it is. And they get into these human bodies and they have a lot of sicknesses sometimes. They feel like they don't belong. They feel like they're outsiders. And then in the sessions, they realize that they came down here as a volunteer to be in a human body because they can influence change by being human rather than looking like an alien. So they've come into the human body to have human experience. And through their awareness that they bring with them, one, Michael, or actually the latest one, because that's happened to me a number of times now too. And so my friend said, well, what am I supposed to do? Am I supposed to go on TV and talk about this? I said, no, it's just the energy. It's the energy that you have. It's like who you are, and adding that positive energy to the pool of positive energy is what you just need to do. So all they needed to do is be here and hold space, a good positive space. I'm going to plug my phone in here because it's about ready to die. So yeah, so that's one way. I mean, we can have aliens and alien bodies coming here now, but and I've been hearing from, well, like Bashar. I don't know if you ever listened to Bashar at all.
Yes,
He's
I've
on a,
heard of him.
oh boy, if you could get him on your podcast, you should email him and see, because he's the top one guy right now that's on all these podcasts. This is an alien that's been channeling through Daryl Anka, who's the brother of Paul Anka, the famous singer, for over 40 years. And his name's Daryl Anka. If you look him up, Daryl Anka, A-N-K-A. But Bashar, B-A-S-H-A-R, he's got stuff all out, and he's even Daryl Anka's wearing the t-shirt about disclosure 2026, 2027. And he's when Bashar talks through Daryl Anka goes into trance and Bashar comes out and talks. And you think you're talking to Jesus, or that is there. He has so much love. He's talking about how we were formed by, he says the aliens came down, a bunch of them, and he says we have strands of DNA in us of at least 15 or maybe more alien races that are in our DNA that we have. So in a sense, we're all aliens. We're transforming, and he purports to be from the future Earth, actually. And but everything he says, it rings like he's some kind of guru, some kind of, he knows so much about love. He knows why we're going through what we're going through, what the fears are that we're having. He's really exciting to listen to. And he's doing these huge conferences now with thousands of people, like in Sedona, different places now. And people are starting to be prepared, as he says now. He says the first aliens that you see are going to be more look like you, okay, because it's not going to scare people. But he says we're doing the drip approach right now, and he says we're bringing our ships in where more people are seeing them, then disappearing, bringing them in, disappearing, and just getting people used to us, because it takes time. You want people, coming out with And people have asked him, well, what about if people try to shoot your things down? He goes, we're not worried about that. We can deal with that, no big deal. But he says, we've been doing this for thousands of years, slowly preparing the planet. And we've been here, aliens have been on this planet for forever, around us, through us, all through ancient history. That's why you see all these drawings and stuff of spaceships and beings, that's kind of thing on these cave drawings and things. So they've been here forever, and they've been slowly nurturing us along, allowing us for our consciousness to rise to the point where now we're ready to graduate from here to realize we are part of a community, okay? Part of a loving community. And they'll tell you there are bad aliens too, but most of them are good, just like people. You know what? 90% of people are awesome, and 10% cause all the havoc in the world. And right now, they have pretty much control of the negative aliens. Said, not going to have to worry about them. We got them in check, whatever. But they say, well, all they're here for is to help us to raise our awareness, to help us to become healthier people by giving us things, by giving us technology that's going to help us evolve. And they say, even someone asked Bashar the other day, is AI involved in it? He says, oh my gosh, he says, AI is about half of who we are. AI is helping them and do all the things that they're capable of doing. Anyway, kind of off the subject a little bit, but it's very interesting. If they are coming, it's going to prepare. Everybody's got to be prepared, because it's going to shift things in the way we look at God, the religion, everything, like that. And there's going to be good and bad. Now, I've heard this from other sources too. They say it's like we're in the rapids right now. It's like going down the Colorado River, and we've hit the rapids, and man, he says, just hang in there, hold on tight. Some of people are going to fall in and drown, unfortunately, because they can't handle the rapids, but you're going to get through to the other side where it's going to be a calm, beautiful lake. Okay. But it's going to take some time, in that way. So now maybe the last thing, why don't I, because we talked about the council, and there's people, if they want to have questions about the council or more like that, they can always go to my website, which you have right in front of you there. It's your published. People get a hold of me. I'm happy to talk to people. They don't have to book a session. I never talk anybody into having a session. You just don't do that. That would be a sin in a way to do that. You don't push people. All I do is give them the information, and I tell people, you're going to feel it. If you're supposed to have a session, there'll be something burning in you right now that's saying, I got to find out more about this, or let me dig into this more. So I've had people that have listened to me on podcasts 3 or 4 years ago, and they're now calling me and says, okay, I wasn't ready then, but I am now. Are you still alive, Regan? Yeah, I'm 76 now. So I said, all right, I'll be around for a while, but they told me I've got to start eating better. And that'll keep me around for a while. They said my diet's pretty good, but they said I need to make some improvements. So, I'm working on that right now. But the places we haven't discussed yet is the Soul Group, the Hall of Records, and the Place of Recreation. Matter of fact, maybe next, and the Wisdom Temples. Okay, oh my gosh, so there's like 3, 4 other things that we could do another couple hours on. But maybe let's end tonight with, it's fun, the Place of Recreation. Because people wonder, what am I going to do when I get up there? The old thing, play a harp all the time, I said, no. What we found out, when you get to the other side, you'll make a choice of whether you want to come back and do some more down here, or go to another planet, or do whatever. You get to make the decisions. The souls always make their decisions, but there's usually council members or guides that are giving you counseling about what possibly would be the best choice. But sometimes we say, nah, forget you guys, I'm going to go do this. And they'll go, okay, free choice, And then people get down here and they go, what was I thinking, like this. But people on the other side, there's thousands and thousands of jobs on the other side, people working behind the curtain, that don't even, there's a lot of souls that God created that have never even incarnated at all. They don't need to, they're working behind the scenes doing things. We've had people, when we've asked them in the afterlife what they're doing, and some of them have been, the ones I remember recently was they were working on 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 producing other planets, on manufacturing other planets. And this one guy was in charge of mixing the minerals that planet needed for what the life forms were going to be on it. And he was going, oh, scoofed, that's not working. And, he was finding out them getting the thing. So souls actually help create planets, like worker bees. Everybody's behind the scenes doing what they can to propel, to help make God better in a way, so, a lot of souls have advanced enough where they don't incarnate again, but they become guides or council members, because they're trying to, it's like as they evolve, then you help whoever's lower than them in understanding of things, then you kind of counsel those people, so some people are that way. Now, some people, there's like angels that have never incarnated before. There's lots to do over there. But so what do they do for fun over there? So I've had people in comedy clubs. That's pretty cool. Now, okay, I got to tell you the story on that one. This is cool. So when she came in for the session, she was just smiling, giggling. Oh my God, she was so ready to have a session. And talking to her, she said, well, I always try to keep a positive attitude about things. She says, I love to laugh, She says, that's helped me to get through a lot of serious issues in my life where I've been able to laugh at it after a while. And humor is a good part of my life. So we get to the other side. They got my mind working. It says, okay, I wonder if they have comedy clubs there. So I asked the council, do souls have comedy clubs here? They said, yes. Instantly, she's in a comedy club. And on stage was a comedian that looked like Rodney Dangerfield. Do you remember him?
I do.
The old guy, the way you speak that way, the funny guy. Yeah. She says, it looks like Rodney Dangerfield. And I know he passed not too long before that. I said, maybe that's him. So he's telling a joke, and then at one point, some angel wings went whoop, like this out to the sides. And the audience started laughing so uncontrollably. She's in trance. She starts belly laughing so much. And I got the disease. So I started belly laughing. It was like 10 minutes. We were laughing so hard. It was like, oh my God. So then we calmed down. I did a deepening technique because she brought herself out of trance somewhat, went back down. And then not a council member, but a guide who was in charge of the comedy club came up to her and says, I want to give you a dissertation now about humor and how important humor is in your life, that God created humor for a lot of reasons. So in her mind, she's seeing a PowerPoint presentation of a pie, and humor was like about 40%. It was huge, that humor, laughter, lightness and all that, and how important it was. And he says, that's God's gift to us down here to kind of alleviate some of the stress that's here. And you should use it anytime you can, do whatever you can to lighten up, that kind of thing. So that was an important lesson for her, and that helped her because, it was telling her she's on the right track, that she keeps humor in her life so much, and it's helped her. And it was verifying, that was the case. So I know there's golf up there because I've had that happen in my dreams probably dozens of times, where when my dad shows up in my dreams, we're in a golf. That's what we used to do. That was our father's son time, was golf. So we're up there and Dad's taking me on a new course somewhere, and we're done. And then all of a sudden I wake up and I go, oh my God, that was Dad. I should have asked him some questions, but it was so normal and natural, but I had a professional golfer come, and I said, ask the council, do they have golf clubs at heaven? Yeah. You want golf clubs? You got a golf club, So all of a sudden he goes, oh my God, this is the most beautiful golf course I've ever seen in my life. He said, this is beautiful. And I said, well, you want to get out and hit some balls or something? He said, no, I'm okay. He didn't do that, but he got to see that it was there. So when I have people, we have a little bit of time. It only takes 5 or 10 minutes. I'll say, can my client go to see what souls are doing for recreation? And they'll say, sure. Boom, they're there. Now, these are some of the people that I had. One of them, they were playing tag. It was like they were but in soul. So they were these balls of energy whizzing by each other, trying to reach and tag each other, like zooming back and forth. And every time he would tag somebody by him, he would go, woo! He says, feels like sex. That's the only thing he could relate it to in the human body, was that energy like this. So back and forth. So, wow, this is so much fun. He was doing that. Okay. Another one, it was like basketball, but it was like hoops that they had, but they had these balls of energy and they were rushing back and forth with each other, just like basketball, and having to make hoops. Maybe that's where basketball started and somebody had that dream and started basketball. Who knows? Um, and then another one, they were in like an art class and they were designing planets, like saying, okay, who can come up with the best design for a planet? And so they're molding and this kind of thing. People have been on art, doing art, that sort of thing. So I haven't found anybody playing a harp yet, although they probably do someplace up there. So maybe, next time we can go into the wisdom temples, where they have almost classes for almost every imaginable thing that people do down here to teach them how to come from their heart, how to, to put love into everything they do. And I've had some amazing stories on that. And then there's also the Hall of Records. People call it, I don't remember the right pronunciation, Akashic records. In other words, people, sometimes the mediums will say, well, I'm going to go to the records, Akashic records, and I'm going to pull out something about your life. People they're not too much interested in that a lot of times because this is other stuff that, but sometimes when they go there and the thing is about the Hall of Records, they almost all identify it almost the same way. The same with the council. What I do in research, I'll say, okay, now you're at the council. First thing I'm going to ask you, do you feel like you're standing on a solid surface? Most of the time they go, yeah. I says, look down and tell me what's the surface. And they'll say marble. And then I'll go, okay, you're there, because that's almost everybody says that. But the places that the council have reminds people of these Greek temples, or these, places from ancient Egypt where everything was like marble and beautiful and stuff like that. So, a lot of times you can tell, and then I'll tell my client later, I said, I've had 300 other people say they're standing on marble. Okay. They go, okay, I must have been there, because they didn't know ahead of time, that kind of thing. And the last thing, next time we can talk more about the soul group. And these are souls that you spend a lot of time with other lifetimes, and they're mostly the people that are in your life now. And you'll find out, this is where you talk to the people, the higher selves of people, famous people, if you want to talk to somebody, and kind of reconnect with people that have passed on, that sort of thing. And there's a lot to say, about that even too. So yeah, like I say, and we just, by the next time I'm on next time, we'll probably have a lot of other stuff to have, because I've getting so excited about doing these sessions now, because it seems things are shifting into high gear right now. With the different sessions, and they're getting deeper into things and more healing is happening. And we're discovering more little trinkets, of knowledge and stuff over there.
No, and I greatly appreciate you sharing this with us, because what I find interesting is a lot of thoughts that I have about certain things seem to be validated in a way from your stories and what you're relaying. And so it's like, wow, okay, that's really cool. And one of the things that like kind of struck me right off the bat was when I was promoting the show, I was like, yeah, we're going to delve deeper into your experiences and deeper into the afterlife. And one of the first things you said was, yeah, we're going to go deeper. And this is now what's going on. And I was like, I knew it. It's like somehow I knew that's what was going to happen. And so it's
Yeah.
like, it's really cool how synchronicity works. But another thing that I really appreciate is everybody tells their story of, oh, this is where I was, and now I'm here. This is what I'm doing. And so everybody has this opinion, oh, I have to die or
Yeah.
nearly die to experience this. So I'll just wait because I don't want to rush this because
I
God
don't want
forbid I die and, then what?
yeah.
And that was another thing that I was sharing with people in promoting this episode was here is a way to go into the afterlife without the trauma of
Yeah,
dying.
right.
And I think that's such a beautiful gift to give to people. And it's almost like, you're talking about, we're in a world now where the shift is coming, and it's like, this is a major part to where somebody went in and said, okay, here's the fear of death. Well, we're not going to take that, throw it to the side. It's no longer necessary. What's left? And it's like, that's where you come in, and you're like, here is, you can experience it without the fear.
Imagine
And
imagine life without fear. What it would just
yeah,
how it would change things, right?
and so
Hmm.
that is just so amazing. And I just, I feel like, that's the age we're coming into, is where we're learning we don't need the fear. The fear is not controlling us anymore.
Hmm.
And situations in our lives are we're starting to react to differently because we're not afraid of the outcomes now. And I just think
Hmm.
it's really great how every once in a while, like, I forget how many months it was, but you were on before and we started this, and here we are again. And
Yeah.
I have a strong feeling before the end of the year we'll be doing
Kind
another
of.
episode. And it's
Yeah,
like, here, it's like you talk about stages, but it's like, yeah, here's the stages of awareness of this work even unfolding,
yeah.
and how it's correlating to the world around us.
I know. It's like, and yeah, you make this so easy, Michael. It's like we're just sitting in a living room having a man-to-man conversation about stuff, and we're talking about stuff instead of football or something. We're talking about really important things here. So no longer do people have to almost die to be able to experience what it's like in the afterlife. All they have to do is lay down, listen to my voice, and just kind of relax. They get right just about they're falling asleep, and then boom, then a door opens up and you have hours of poking around over there, and seeing what's happening. And just to remind people too listening, if they want to have a session, there's Visit the Afterlife. You have it right there. But on the contact page, you just say, "Hey, I heard you on Michael's show, and can we talk for a little bit?" I love just talking to people like we're talking and whatever. Like most people that call in usually want to book a session. They're already kind of, yeah, I got to do this. But I tell them how to prepare about the homework and everything. And then they decide if they want to do it on Zoom, like if they're in another country or in the United States, anywhere, um, in the privacy of their own space, like in their own bedroom where they feel relaxed and calm. A lot of people like doing the Zoom because they don't have to travel. They're not in a unfamiliar place, and they can just lay there and just relax. All they have to do is be able to hear and see them, which nowadays is a piece of cake. Technology is so good right now. It's rare that any of us are experiencing where we lose. Oh, by the way, if somehow there was a thunderstorm and the internet went out, you won't be stuck in zombie land or whatever. You'll wake up just like you do when you come out of a nap, and you'll be you come back to your senses. So because some people think, well, what happens if that happens? Am I going to be stuck in limbo somewhere forever? And I said, nope, you're okay. And
Yeah,
that
or
way.
God forbid, power goes out and the computer goes out because it's plugged in and no longer getting fed power. And it's like, uh-oh.
I did
Well,
have last month, and somebody I forgot to tell them make sure you have your laptop plugged in so it doesn't run out of battery, and ran out of battery. So I just waited by the phone. An hour later, he calls and he goes, "Oh, I guess I goofed. I just fell asleep, and and then we just hooked it back up and started again. So that's good. Um, Also, too, on my website, lots of good videos on there. But I also want to mention too, I'm a regular clinical hypnotherapist, certified in that, and I do help people too. On my website, there's a tab for traditional hypnotherapy, and some people aren't ready to go to the afterlife yet, but they want to work on traumas or fears, phobias. They want to change habits in this life. Okay, so they'll call me, and then we'll do traditional therapy. And even in that therapy, it's becoming traditional now, but 20 years ago, it was woo woo because all the stuff I use that gets people through their issues and problems really, really fast. Instead of taking years of talking therapy, I use energy psychology. We could even do another show on this sometime because it's so, so powerful. People that have severe traumas. I've had people that on a scale of 1 to 10 are pinging at a 10. Their trauma is so bad. And in one session, they're down to like a 2 or a 1. I mean, it's almost like a miracle happens and it doesn't come back again. It's all about balancing their body's energy that's in the body that's disrupted. And that disruption causes this when they think about something, fears and phobias and traumas. Once you go into the body and you take that energy and get it back to where it's supposed to be, people just calm down and they're all of a sudden they can still remember their thing that happened, but they're not doing this anymore because that energy was in the wrong place. So on my website, there's videos they can watch. You can see 4 servicemen and they're like this with such huge, horrible trauma. And in 4 days, they're talking like we're talking and they can't believe it. And it stays that way because they test them later. So that's like a miracle to me too. So God's given us better ways of taking care of just our regular traumas. And now he's opened up this so we can go deeper, even, deeper into why we have our traumas, get more of a deep cleanse, cleaning, healing that way too. So,
Yes. And on the first episode, we brought up your books, and are
oh yeah,
you
yeah, yeah, yeah,
are
yeah,
you
yeah.
writing more books?
Well, I'm in the middle of another one now but it keeps changing because every time I get a chapter done, more stuff happens, and I go, now I got to change that, So we'll see what happens. But anybody listening to the show, I'm decided I'll be happy to give away. If they go to my website and on the contact page, say, look, I was on listen to Michael's podcast, and you said you give away 2 free books, and I do their ebook versions. But anybody that asks, they don't have to book a session or anything. They just want the books to read. And I believe I sent you the books, didn't I?
Yes, you
Uh,
did. So I
yeah,
can attest he does deliver.
yeah. Okay. So sometimes it takes me a few days, but I do as fast as I can. I get them out to everybody. One is called 3 Hours, 33 Minutes in Heaven. That's about my experience on the other side, which in another session, I can even tell you more about that. We didn't get into that tonight. But the second book is called Reincarnation is Real. And it's about the current research around the world being done on reincarnation. And it's a real fun, easy book to go through because you'll read some and you click on a link and it takes you to a YouTube video that's talking about the same thing back and forth. So it's really kind of entertaining in a way that way. But I used to sell them like when I was on Coast to Coast, like 3 times, and I'd sell like 100 books like overnight, each time. And I just decided, I'm financially stable in my life right now. And when I give the books to you, you can email them to anybody you want. So just free, just pass them on to whoever you want, because I want people to know about this process, because whether it's me or you could go to the Newton Institute site, there's 200 or 260 something on there now listed. You might have someone in your area that can do a session for you. Although, we're in 45 countries, so we're still spread pretty thin, that way. But, that's one thing people can do too. But I'd be happy to help them if they feel I'm the guy, or get someone from the Newton Institute. The main thing is if they're supposed to have this, we want to be available to help people, shift their lives into a better place.
Yes, and thank you for that. And um I do know, go do check out the website. The website is very actually user friendly and is really easy to use, and
Yeah.
I kind of appreciated that because a lot of times you go there and they're like, "Oh, you got to click this and
And nothing
here's this."
happens.
And you're like, "Well, where is this that I'm supposed to click?" And they're like, "Oh, yeah, you need to click this and then you're going to see this link and then this link." And it's like, forget it. By the time I figure it out, it's like I've already changed my mind.
Yeah, I know
But
it. Me too. Yeah, it's pretty straightforward. And I had it designed that way where it's pretty easy to navigate. There's one tab on there that's just about past life regression, because some people, they go, well, I don't know about this. I'm kind of scared. Can we just start simple and just see if I can go to a past life first and see if this will work? And that's what ended up today. So we were just going to get her to a past life, which we kind of did, but we needed another session to get even better. But generally speaking, that's a piece of cake. Those sessions last about 2 or 3 hours. the life between lives, you do go to a past life, so it includes a past life regression, and then you go to the in between lives, where you go in between lives. So it's just more involved and a little bit longer that way. So happy to help anybody. Somebody sees this now, or if you're watching this, you could watch this 10 years from now because it's on the internet. And if I'm not around in 10 years, I will be, I think, if I can hear and see you. I'm just thinking. Anyway, if I'm not around, you can go to the Newton Institute, because they're planning on being, for the next millennia, having people do this, keep training people. And, we can help you to have this experience. Okay.
Yes. And so I want to leave you with the message, and that is from my heart and the heart of my shows to you. Thank you for what you're doing for humanity. Thank you for sharing this adventure, this journey, and standing up and being your authentic self and sharing this authentic experience, and not like pushing it and going, "Oh, you got to
Yeah.
do this, got to do that." You're really authentic and humble about it. And that to me is amazing, because I would be like, oh my God, you got to do this. You got, look at where you could go and how much benefit. It's like, but yet you're grounded. And so thank you for that.
You're
Thank you for
welcome.
showing that you can do this work and still be able to fit in to this world, because
Yeah.
a lot of people have struggled with that. So thank you.
You're welcome, Michael. And thanks for having me on again. And I'll look forward to seeing you another time. So just keep on
Yes.
doing the good work. You're on your side doing the light work. I'm this side doing, and we're like, working together here, just to try to get people to wake up to things and to realize how much better life can be.
Yes, and another thing I'll say in transparency of the synchronicities, and I love how these are starting to unfold, is I was looking at my schedule and I was like, I haven't really talked about this topic for a little while. Maybe, and next thing I know, I get a message and it's Regan saying, "Hey, can I come on your show?" And I'm like, perfect.
Yeah.
So
Perfect.
I love how the universe works. It
Me
brings
too.
the timing to where it needs to be.
It's amazing for sure. All right, till
So,
next time.
yes, so thank you. And do go and check out his site and do follow my shows, because as you can see, guests pop in and they come on the show. So if you want to catch the next episode, you better follow along so that you'll see the alerts.
Okay.
And blessings to everyone. And just remember, I'm going to kind of put a little bit of words into what Regan was saying, but always know there's hope. And always know we are not alone. So keep
Not
that
alone.
hope alive, and you will be able to overcome everything. So, with that, I'm going to say good night, everyone, and we'll see you on the next episode.
See ya. Where we go? There. See you all later. Bye now. Bye, Michael.
Bye bye. Thank you again.
You're welcome.